What is going on, guys? So we are finally going to talk about the OML and the accessions process for how cadets actually get selected for a specific MOS as an officer in the Army. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about here. The OML, which is the outcome metrics list, is a list that, you will basically accumulate points and stuff while you're a cadet going through ROTC. You're gonna get all these points and everything's gonna be calculated together and put into this list. And depending on where you fall on this list will depend on basically the odds of you getting the MOS that you want. So this is an extremely important thing. But there is so much to talk about this. I have actually shot this video a couple of times now. The first time it was like well over 30 minutes. I'm gonna try and keep it short. I found the actual Army documentation on the actual process, and I'm going to attempt to actually make these things a little bit shorter because, again, there's a lot to talk about. I can maybe do another video or so talking about these things, but for the most part, I'm gonna just try to give it to you guys straight. I'm gonna read through the actual steps in which you're kind of going to go through, and then I will try to briefly explain a few things because, again, there's a lot. So first off, I went through ROTC, so this is going to be the experience of going through ROTC, doing the whole OML and everything, and what that process is going to be like. If you're doing OCS, it's going to be a little bit different. If you're doing West Point, things like that, it's going to be obviously way different. But this is an ROTC kind of thing and an ROTC Accessions video. So if you're more interested in like OCS and stuff, this isn't going to be the video for you. So I'm just talking about, again, ROTC, which is where I think it's like 80% of the United States Army officers come from. So it's the majority of you guys. But anyways, the OML is used to decide two different things: whether or not you get active duty, National Guard, Army Reserves, and it also decides what MOS you want. So if you want to go signal, cyber, aviation, ordnance, field artillery, whatever officer MOS you want, that is going to be decided by basically this OML, where you're going to fall here. And then for the fiscal year that you're actually going to become an officer, there's different requirements, there's different slots and numbers and stuff on how many how many positions are available for each specific MOS. So it's going to vary your odds of getting a specific MOS every single year. But those are the two things that are basically decided by this. It's going to decide whether or not you get active duty. It's going to decide whether or not you get the MOS that you want. Now, I'm going to read a few bullet points off here, and I should put this up here on the screen. If not, I'm sorry if I forget to edit that in. But I'm going to read off a few things. So active duty and reserve files are divided in two. So the OML is going to be divided into a couple different things. GRFD, go reserve duty. A GRFD cadet is basically a cadet who has gotten a scholarship, and it guarantees you a position in the Army Reserve. So GRFD is going to go reserves. If you volunteer to do reserve duty, you are going to go reserve duty. Those below the active duty allocation line go to reserve duty. So this is one of the major things. If you're wanting to be an active duty officer and you don't you don't make the limit, like you're just not good enough, they put you in Army Reserves or the National Guard. That's kind of how that works. Which is why it says here that if you want to volunteer for reserve duty, you're going to get it at least 99.9% of the time. Every year there's, I guess, a person or two. There's a few people that will be given active duty even though they requested National Guard or they requested reserves. I guess that's just a case-by-case thing. But for the most part, the vast majority, if you request reserve, you're going to get reserve. If you request National Guard, you're going to get National Guard, because the majority of people that want to be officers in the Army are requesting active duty. And then there's not going to be enough active duty slots to fill, so then they will fall below the line and will be given a reserve slot or a National Guard slot. Something pretty interesting here is Medal of Honor dependents go active duty if requested. So if you happen to be like the son or daughter of somebody who's a Medal of Honor recipient, then you're going to get active duty if you want it, which is pretty cool. That's a cool little perk, even though, that's extremely rare. Nurses are not guaranteed active duty, and then active duty green to gold cadets must go active duty. So if you are active duty, you decide to do green to gold, which is something I've talked about in a past video, you have to become an active duty officer. Now, if you are in the reserves or the guard and you do ROTC, you don't have to stay in the reserves, you don't have to stay in the guard, you don't have to do active duty, you can do whatever you want. But if you do green to gold, you're going to have to become an active duty officer. So the number 4 bullet point here is the component. Active duty reserve is going to be released first. So around about October of the fiscal year that you're looking to commission in, you're gonna find out what component that you get, whether or not you get active duty, reserves, or National Guard. You are going to find that out first. If you're active duty, you're going to find out your branch later on, and it's going to be probably around December, January-ish time. But if you are reserves or in the Guard, once you find out that you have reserves, once you find out that you got National Guard, then you have 1 month to actually go out and find a vacancy, to actually go out and find the MOS, the unit, and whatever that you want, and then actually submit a request to actually go to that unit. That's how it works in the reserves. That's how it works in the Guard. So this OML thing, it's kind of just dependent upon, they're going to select, which component you get, active duty or reserves, and you have 1 month once you find that out to actually find the unit that you want, which is why I made a video a long time ago of me actually showing you guys me picking the duty station and the MOS that I wanted. But once that month is over, then the OML really comes into play for these reserves and National Guard soldiers, and they will then be kind of thrown into this algorithm and be given an MOS by the needs of the Army, similar to how active duty is. Now here's the big thing that's I guess the meat and potatoes of this video, and then shortly after this I will talk about actually what goes into the OML and what actually you're looked at as a cadet, what goes into this whole process. I will talk about that at the end of this video, but the OML is important because of this bullet point right here. So bullet point number 6, active duty board branches will follow the following sequence. The top 10% will get their first branch choice. So if you are on the OML and you are a top 10% cadet, you are guaranteed to get your first pick. So what's gonna happen is when you're doing all this accessions process, you are going to number from your favorite to your least favorite MOS as an officer. And if you want to do infantry, you're going to put that as number 1. Whatever MOS you want to have, you need to put that as your number 1, and hopefully you'll get one of your top 3. But if you're in the top 10%, you're going to be guaranteed that you're going to get your number 1 pick. So that's really awesome. The way this kind of works out is every single year there's so many different slots that are available for a specific MOS. I will try and throw up a picture right here of some year of the slots that are available for the different MOSs. Don't pay attention too much to the numbers. You can kind of get a gist a little bit, but every year the numbers are going to change just a little bit. They're not going to totally flip-flop like insanely a lot, but for the most part the numbers will be around about the same. So you should be able to see by whatever picture I decide to throw up here which ones are more competitive, because they will just have less slots available. Now the next bullet points here is by OML branch up to 40% of each branch allocation without Bradso. So this basically says, you got the top 10% that gets their first pick. The next 40% of cadets on the OML list, they will try to, obviously top 20%, they're probably going to get their first pick too, maybe their second pick. But the lower down the percentages you go, the more likely it is that you're going to get your second pick, your third pick, your fourth pick, even lower depending on how you go on the OML. And without Bradso is something that you can request as a cadet to help ensure that you will get the MOS that you want. And so the next bullet point here is talking about the 55%. So from 40%, the next 40%, and then to 55%, this is where the Bradsos are gonna come into play. So if you put on there that you wanna branch and you really wanna become an infantry officer, you really wanna do it, you can branch with Bradso, and what that's gonna do is, I believe, add an extra 2 years to your contract as an officer. So if you actually get branched with Bradso, it's not gonna matter if you don't get it. So if you're in the top 10%, but you go Bradso to be an infantry officer, if you're in the top 10%, they're not gonna add that 2 years. But if you happen to fall in this 40% to 55% range, and they select you and you get the MOS that you want solely because that you branched Bradso and you're willing to do an extra couple of years, then that's going to be where those extra 2 years come into play. There's another thing you can do called ADSO, which is selecting a duty station that you want. So if you want to go to Fort Hood for some reason and you want to select that as your ADSO duty station, then if you get to be stationed at Fort Hood, it is going to add an extra 2 years on to your contract. So that is kind of how the OML works, just kind of the general gist of it. Links are going to be in the description if you want to look at more stuff. Whatever I can find that I think is going to be beneficial to you guys, the links will be down below. So if you really want to get the MOS that you want or whatever as an officer, watch this video, read the links in the description. You can look at everything that goes into it, because there's a lot. But what I want to cover now is actually what is on the OML. So like what is all a part of this freaking thing that is going to dictate your life and dictate what MOS you get. So I have my Accessions management sheet here. I'm not going to show you guys like the specific things, and I'll probably throw something up here, but I'm going to basically read to you guys, you know, the gist of what's going to be on here. Aside from this piece of paper, or these couple of pieces of papers right here, there's a couple of things that kind of go into the Accessions process and the OML list, and that is the your talent management. So you're going to take this little test thing, and it's going to decide whether or not you have all these different leadership skills, and that's going to be taken into account with this whole thing. And then the other thing that's going to be important is advanced camp. And advanced camp is the last summer training exercise stuff that you have to go through. It's about a month long, and you will do this between your junior and your senior year. So your MS3 year between that year and your MS4 year. There's going to be about 3 weeks out in the field doing platoon exercise and everything. And this is your chance to really showcase everything that you've learned as a cadet. So going through ROTC, your freshman year, your sophomore year, your junior year, which is where you really start prepping for advanced camp, you're going to showcase your leadership skills, your platoon, you know, leadership skills, your platoon operation knowledge, you know, how to brief an op order, how to call for fire, how to do land nav. All of these different things you're going to be tested on at advanced camp. And then there's this little piece of a part of this kind of, you know, algorithm or whatever called Recondo. And if you're at advanced camp, and essentially if you get a first time go on everything, so you pass, you know, land nav first time go, and you get like all of the points, if you be a shoot expert at the range, if you pass all the tests for first aid and call for fire, if you pass all that your first time, then you're going to get this little thing called Recondo, and it's going to give you a couple extra points that will go on here. But some of the major things, again, I'll throw up a picture right here on how this is kind of broken down. But for the academic portion of this Accessions management sheet, your GPA is going to be really important. So if you're wanting to become an officer, your GPA is extremely important. And remember, if you're wanting to be active duty, this is even more important. If you're wanting to do reserves, if you're wanting to do guard, it's kind of important, but it's not nearly as important as if you wanted to be an active duty officer. If you wanted to go reserves and then all of a sudden, like, you waited past that extra month after you got your branch or your component, then you're just gonna be, I guess, out of luck, and you're gonna have to be subject to this whole thing. But if you're going, again, active duty, this is really important. So your GPA, I believe it's like 25-26% of the calculation for this OML. Some of the other things that are going to be on here is whether or not you have a strategic language major. So if you're taking strategic language classes, that are going to be important. Maybe I'll have a picture right here or not, but basically like Arabic, some of the things that you might actually think is important. You know, if you speak, you know, Spanish or something like that, which is a fairly common language, that's not really a strategic language, and I hope that's not on this list if I put up a list here. If not, I would just sound really stupid saying that. But you know, Spanish, a lot of people know Spanish. It's not like a very something that we need a lot of right now in the military, because we're fighting really for the most part in the Middle East, kind of overseas. There's not as many Spanish speaking people over there. So that's that. And for the leadership category on this whole, you know, Accessions thing, there's gonna be a couple different times where you're gonna have your leadership being, they're gonna be grading you. So you're gonna have your leadership at ROTC. They're going to rank you as qualified, most qualified, excellent, kind of thing like that. And then what they're also going to do on this is they're going to rank you from first to last cadet. So the best cadet to the last cadet to the middle cadet. So if there's 20 of you guys, they're going to rank you between 1 and 20. That's going to go on here. That's going to go into the whole calculation and everything. And the final, I guess, summary of how that is all going to go is going to be worked out somewhere on this picture that I swear I hope I put right here. The other time you're going to be graded is when you're at advanced camp. The leaders at advanced camp are going to grade you, so that's another reason why advanced camp is important, because of the Recondo thing, and then how they're going to score you at advanced camp. They're going to rank you between first and last in your platoon, and they're going to give you an actual ranking, whether you're excellent or okay, kind of like a word ranking. A few other beneficial things to have on this is whether or not you have a full-time job, a part-time job, or you are prior National Guard, prior Army Reserves, and or you're an Smp Cadet. So Smp Cadet is a cadet who is in the simultaneous membership program, and it basically means that, you know, they're doing similar things to somebody who's in the reserve or the guard, and they're drilling monthly with some unit. That's what an Smp Cadet is. There's really nothing that, you know, special, complicated about that. If you are a cadet and then you want to become an Smp Cadet, the only difference is going to be that you will drill at a unit monthly, and you know, if that interferes with ROTC, then ROTC will take precedence. But that's the gist of it. People ask me to talk about Smp Cadet. There's not that much complicated stuff about it. You know, if you want to go Smp, you're probably going to get it, and you will just drill monthly just as if you were in the reserves. Another important thing is your PT score. Oh my gosh, what a surprise. Your PT score is actually going to be important, and it's going to go into this list. So obviously you want to try to get to 300. That's going to maximize the points that you get on this, because all these points, they're going to be, you know, added together. They're going to be thrown together into this algorithm thing. They're going to be, you know, weighted differently. And then on the OML, you know, the more points you have, the better off you're going to be. So if you get a 300 on your PT test, that's going to work out really good. The only difference here is they're going to take the fall PT score and the spring PT score of your junior year. So your freshman and sophomore year of ROTC, not that the PT scores don't matter, because you want to do good on your PT score, because remember, your PMS, the professional military science, your cadre and ROTC are going to be looking at you, and they're going to be grading you as well. They're going to be looking at you like, oh, this cadet, you know, is terrible at PT. He's never improving, or she's never improving. That's not good, and they might put you as a lower rank. So that's important. And then if you do any extracurricular activities like sports teams, or you're on the varsity team, community team, intramural leagues, things like that, that's going to give you some extra points as well. Now again, this video did go on pretty freaking long. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff to talk about when you're talking about the accessions process for an ROTC cadet, somebody's trying to become an officer. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of different criteria. I hope I explained it in a way that is going to inform you a little bit more than you already knew. And then if you want to know more than what I talked about in this video, again, links in the description down below. Really, the only other thing that I guess I didn't mention is the whole, just remember that your leaders at the advanced camp and at your ROTC unit are going to write like a written review, a written evaluation on you as a cadet. But for the most part, that's the gist of the OML. That's the gist of the accessions process. If you're wanting to become an active duty officer, if you're wanting to become a reserve officer, a National Guard officer, that's kind of the gist of what you need to know. That's kind of, you know, just the OML. You know, if you want to get the MOS that you want, ensure that you're top 10%. Some of the ways that you can do that is actually, you know, showing up in RTC events and actually doing good on your PT tests, and really just being a good soldier overall. I said that super weird, but there's not many tips that I can give. You know, obviously show up to volunteer events, show up to PTs, show up to the labs, all the different things and events that you're going to do in RTC to put yourself out there. That's going to ensure that you get a little bit of a higher ranking with your cadre. That's going to, you know, work into your favor for the OML. You know, just make sure you're studying real well, especially whenever it comes time for advanced camp. Know how to brief an op order, know how to do land nav, know all these other things. I made a video about advanced camp a while back, but you know, for the most part, that's the OML. And if you made it to the end of this video, leave a comment down below. I love it whenever I do a super long video. Even actually, I don't love it when I do a long video, but when I do a long video and you leave a comment down below that you made it to the end, do it right now. Leave a comment down below. Let me know that you made it to the end of this video. If this helped you out at all, that would be fantastic. And let me know by hitting that like button. That would be freaking awesome. If you want to stick around for some more videos, hit the subscribe button. That would be even better. If you're not following me on Instagram and Snapchat, my social media links are right there. I'm mumbling my words and stuff right now because I've been talking for so dang long. I hope you guys have an amazingly fantastic day, and I will see you later.